Well, welcome to the Women's March Canada podcast, making the equality of women in Canada the new norm. This is episode 54, titled The Lunch Lady, of course, right, Ruthie?
Yep.
I'm Melissa Durrell, and I'm your host. Women's March Canada inspires, unites, and leads the charge for the advancement of women across Canada. And as I mentioned, our guest today is Ruthie Burd. I'm pretty excited to interview you today. Ruthie is the founder of the Lunch Lady franchise. I have 2 kids, by the way, and I get your brochures to my home. And she brings delicious and nutritious, ready-made lunches to kids in schools across Canada. So Ruthie, welcome to our podcast.
Well, thank you. Yeah, welcome to you too, to my living room.
Yeah, well, it looks lovely. Now tell me, how did you get started as the Lunch Lady?
Oh, well, everyone has a story. I'm sure this is your 54th, then you've got 53 other stories. So I have my own to add. One of our kids was diagnosed with autism when he turned 3. And although we always knew he was a little different, when you have that diagnosis, it brings home to you that aha moment that your life is going to be a little bit different. And you have a lot of decisions to make. Well, one of the first decisions I made was I wasn't going to be known as the autistic kid's mother. I'm a person as well. I had a younger son, an older son, and a husband. And I also wanted to make sure they got some time from me. But I would have all these therapies that would happen. My husband was a mechanical engineer. And in the early 90s, municipal work was scarce. And so all consulting engineers felt a bit nervous. So he said, we're going to have to think up something. Is there anything you can think up to do just in case?
Awesome. You weren't an entrepreneur from a very young age. It was in your 30s, I'm assuming, or late 20s, early 30s.
Well, now I'm in my 40s, right? But in my 30s, when I had my second set of kids, in my 30s, I had ended up actually in Montego Bay, Jamaica, manufacturing window blinds. And it was quite there by accident as well. My first husband felt he'd be a happier person if he had his own business. And long and short is we moved from Hamilton to Montego Bay, and we went into business with another couple. And I knew nothing at all about making vertical or Venetian blinds. I went and learned at a place called Panoramic Shades. It's still there in Toronto. And my first husband did not like it. He didn't enjoy it, wasn't what he thought. He wanted to leave. I didn't want to leave, so I stayed. He left. And that paved the way for my wonderful husband, number 2, who I married about 5 years later. But while I was in Jamaica, I learned a whole lot about business. I knew nothing about business. I have a degree in history. I have no interest in food at the time, no nutritional expertise, no cooking skills, no interest in anything cooking. And when I was young, my mother died when I was 13, and she was a public health nurse, and she could do everything to perfection. I was an only child, and she wanted me to have the life she didn't have because of the depression. So I couldn't lift an iron, boil water, turn on the stove, none of those skills. And then she died and left my dad and I. And so it never occurred to either of us to learn to cook. We just more or less ate out of a can for 5 years until I went away to university. So I never really learned that cooking thing or the importance of diet. If there'd been McDonald's at that time, my dad and I probably would have been in the dining area of McDonald's every evening. Right? Now, however, I love to cook. I'm very good actually now, but I had.
So I want to take you back then. So you're saying you knew you needed to bring some income into the house.
That's right.
And so you're looking around at your skills, and you'd run a business in the past, and it's really an importing-exporting business, essentially.
And manufacturing. Well, actually, it was manufacturing.
Manufacturing, okay. So you had skills.
Yes.
How did you make windows to lunch?
Well, I got a book from the library called Patchwork Economics. And it had a whole bunch of things. I thought maybe it would tweak something, right? You could do. One was you could make silk flowers. And there was no online selling at that time, right? But you could take orders and sell silk flowers or do scrapbooking for people or do their dry clean for them. But I really needed something I could do in the morning that would be all done by lunch, so I could go to occupational therapy, speech therapy. Healthcare professionals don't seem to wake up before noon, or maybe they do their paperwork in the morning, but I needed something that gave me the afternoon. And I read about this man in New York who bought sandwiches from a deli and delivered them to office buildings. And so I thought, I don't want to go downtown, but maybe I can do something with lunch. Lunch is an idea. Maybe I can make lunch and I can deliver lunches to people's homes before their children go to school. That was my first thought.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I have the lunch rush in the morning while we're eating breakfast, and that is definitely a problem that needs a solution. So smart.
Yes, but of course, no mom wants me to show up at her door around 8 o'clock in the morning on a school day. It didn't occur to me that I would have to go through the school. I sent out a survey, and I got back one response, and it wasn't even related to lunch. It was something different about, did I know a good doctor in the area? So there was no support for that idea, but I was not deterred. And I thought, gosh, I can master this. How hard can it be? I learned how to make blinds. I can make lunches, right? And I mean, it's not that I couldn't boil water by this time. I had 2 small kids. I had some basic but rather mediocre skills, you might say. I mean, people were not saying, "Oh, can we please come to your house for dinner?" Oh, it would not be a great joy to be at my house for dinner. I love to go to other people's houses for dinner. So I thought, well, I can do, sandwiches. I don't know. Well, how hard can it be? So I'm a real optimist by personality.
Yeah.
And sometimes impulsive, but in a good way. And so I rented a location because I thought, if I did that, then I'd have to do this. If I do A, then I must do B, right? So it was a tough go. No school wanted what I was offering at all. So in the beginning, I made lunches for gas stations. I'd go to a gas station and say, "You guys never get up for lunch. Would anyone like me to deliver you sandwiches?" But it was very hit and miss, and it wasn't enough to really make a living at it, to be really honest. I had staff, then I laid them off. Then if things got a bit busier, I called them back, laid them off. I fibbed about how the business was going. My husband David would say, "So how are things going there?" Right? He didn't come out and say, Can I see any bank account or anything? No, he just said, "How are things going?" "Oh, things are coming along." That's my favorite line. I borrow money on the side from my father. I ran up my credit cards, but I wasn't going to give up. I just refused to give up.
So why is it because you knew there was a market there, you just hadn't scratched the right spot, or you're stubborn and determined and you're going to make this work?
I thought, if there isn't a market, I'll make one, darn it. If there isn't, right? And I am stubborn. And I couldn't think of anything else, to be perfectly honest. And this was, except for the fact there was very little revenue, right? And, and things went off the rails occasionally. It all fit. The other parts all fit. So I thought, heck, I'm going to keep moving ahead. I can remember, though, I also had some seniors I made lunches for. And in those days, I collected after the fact. I made lunches, and then, I'd bill them by every week or 2 weeks. And I wasn't really great at the paperwork. And I had a couple occasions where the seniors would pass, actually, during a billing period before I billed them. And so they wanted you to sit down and eat lunch with them, right? They wanted you to bring the lunch and sit and eat the lunch, right? So I really loved working with seniors, but I found that, maybe that was not the best model. And I started to focus my attention more on a location where people didn't get out for lunch. So there was an engineering firm that I'd make lunch for someone that was my husband's company, a bit of nepotism there. My dentist's office, she really loved the idea of keeping all her staff in the office and giving them a perk that was affordable, and she ordered lunch for them. So I had a group, but it was never, you could never scale it up. It wasn't scalable at all. There weren't enough people at each location, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd be late, and I had my boys with me, and they were little. They were 3 and 1.
Yeah.
And Bren was just about to go into a program, and Dylan was still with me. And so they'd be strapped in the back. I can still remember. And some days it'd be really bad, and I'd be kind of crying. But I'd try and cry really quietly when they were in the back seat. Like I just sort of like, and if they weren't in the back seat, they were in daycare, or if they were in a program somewhere or whatever, because I had to balance how I could afford that too, right?
Yeah.
Then I just full out wail. I turn the radio up and I just wail as I was driving. However, I did have a partnership that didn't work out for 9 months. She was really, really well organized, and I have to thank her, even though she thought I was totally unnecessary to the business, right? And it was all just a repetitive formula. She taught me the value of the repetitive formula. And so, everything that happens to you, even if it doesn't work out well, benefits you if you're open to learning from it, right?
That's an excellent lesson. Let's just think about that for a second, because it turns every failure into a learning experience, and so
you have to, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of that stubborn pride as well, right? Because it's really easy to take a failure personally and then justify it as a reason to stop doing something. And I think you'll get plenty of support from many people to stop doing something that seems to be causing you some pain, suffering, and grief. But you are the only person inside that knows what it means to you to see something through or not, right? That nobody else can do that for you. And it's understandable why people want to protect you from the difficulties that are all part and parcel of entrepreneurship. But at the same time, I would never deny myself the joy or satisfaction that comes from tying up that beast, right, and sitting on top of it.
Nice.
Nothing's ever going to take that away from me.
So Ruthie, what happened next?
What happened next? How long do we have? Okay. So the partnership we had, by the time the partner and I split up in 1997, we had 7 schools. We finally had gotten into a school. I had actually, just before we had partnered, I had gotten into the first school. I got back one order. One order.
Yeah.
But you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere. We had 7 schools. So I gave her the 4 biggest schools, kept the 3 smallest schools, because I thought, I'm pretty personable. I can go get more, right? So she set up her own deal, and I moved ahead with the lunch lady. She predicted I would be out of business in 6 months because I'm so disorganized, right? Or whatever she perceived. And you know what? That made me more organized, darn it. Yeah, maybe that would have been true, but now I knew I wasn't going to be disorganized. So the lunch lady grew. We got more schools. Yeah. We started to grow. But at the end of 6 years, I realized there's some things I wasn't as good at as maybe some other people might be, for one thing. I also realized I can't be the only woman that wants the lifestyle I now have.
So were you able to maintain sort of that half-day schedule throughout?
Well, yes and no. My children always thought of me as a stay-at-home mom, or because I always was there for them when they came home, but I worked my schedule around them. Being a lunch lady is a full-time job, but you don't do it in a 9-to-5 way.
Right.
So in the morning, you're in the kitchen, and of course, in my day, there was no Cisco and no delivery, no software system, no anything. So every Thursday night would usually find me and my 2 guys at Costco. And they thought, Costco was just a brand new thing then in 1997. And they thought that was like amazing. That was so great. We'd pile up all this stuff. How old were they in those days? They were like 5 and 7. So the little one, right? Well, he wasn't, he's pretty strong. Put him to work real early. So we'd pile everything up, and I'd let them ride on top of all the boxes of stuff I was loading up at Costco, right? They thought that was the best ever. They didn't think that their mother was working. They thought their mother was taking them to ride on this cart and get them French fries afterwards, right? Did I say French fries? Anyways.
The lady said French fries.
I did.
Yeah.
So, but my son, Bran, of course, started he developed this tick of squealing like a dolphin, and it was really unpleasant, right? And it was this like high pitch, like, yee, which would come out several times during our Costco adventures. And I realized he was imitating the noise that the chillers made, right?
Yes.
In Costco, like, so he was trying to imitate the chillers. And I just learned to say to myself, I don't care. I'm never going to see these people again. But you know what? People who shop on a Thursday tend to always shop on a Thursday. And of course I saw these people again, but they just started to say hi, say hello as they went by, right? So it just, even though there are things about it that weren't that great, I kind of made it work for my kids. And they ate a lot of lunch lady leftovers. It's true.
Yeah.
Right? They grew up on lunch lady leftovers, and that's not bad.
Yeah.
And but when I had gotten to around that 1999, I thought, this works for me. I can't be the only person in town that would like this lifestyle. And maybe I should look at doing it a different way. Like maybe I can, I don't know, share it with somebody else, like share the idea, because I'd liked having the partner, because I'm an only child, and I always am building a family around me, right? So I liked the idea. So I went and asked for help, give me some advice. I went to where I'd taken a business course before I started the Lunch Lady, and the fellow there said, have you ever thought of franchising? And I said, well, no, because like really, that's Tim Hortons and McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
He said, you can franchise anything. And I said, you can? Anything like this? You think this is French? He said, if you have a blueprint, do you do the same thing every day? And said, yeah, pretty much. Well, anything that you do the same every day that has a pattern, right? To it, you can franchise that idea. I said, son of a gun. Well, that's pretty amazing. So he introduced me to someone who was a chartered accountant, and he became my partner to franchise the Lunch Lady. And now I'm in a whole different business. Before I've been making lunches, now I'm bending people to my will, right? Because franchising is another business altogether, because you're managing people, not a product the same way, right? Yeah. Plus you're responsible for the product. So franchising, though, I love franchising. My dad was a United Church minister, and he was much older than me after when my mom died. He of the canned stew. So he was very philosophical. It was like growing up with Yoda when I was a teenager. And I didn't like it at the time much, right? I'd want sympathy, and he just gave me philosophy. Now he's been gone, 23 years now. I still think of him every day. And I remember all the things he said to me. And so he said things like, money works best when everybody has some. And I'm sure it wasn't original to him, but it really stuck with me. Yeah. And so that idea, I'm making my living doing this. There must be other women that are in these terrible jobs that would like to make a living closer to home, not having to worry about what they're wearing, not having big commutes, because that was just becoming a really big thing in the late 90s. And so that's why. So in 2001, we sold our first franchise.
Where was it?
In right near my franchise, and it was to my partner's son, believe it or not. It's the Lunch Lady, and we sold it to a guy. He was a student, couldn't find anybody else, right? In the beginning in franchising, when you were members of the Canadian Franchise Association, and I love the association, right? Yeah. And I mentor young franchises. I like that too, right? Because I want to encourage franchising, because I love it so much. And, they tell you, you got to pick the right person and do this. Really, in the beginning, if they're breathing and they pay the fee, you got to start somewhere. Really, it's absolutely true. Because who wants to buy a franchise that no one else has purchased a franchise in? Yeah. They'll have a track record. And so, while none of our first 5 franchisees are still franchisees, because everything has changed so much over time. Completely changed, right? And Mike, bless his heart, he did his MBA, And then he works for one of the banks, and now he's a small business manager with staff under him. So everything he learned at the lunch lady, he's been able to apply to his real life, right? His other life, right? Which is great. But most of our lunch ladies are moms with kids that are younger. And the furthest east we go is Halifax. And the furthest west we go is Surrey and BC. Yeah. So
across the country then?
We're not in every province. We're in 5 provinces. There's 36 kitchens. And what will happen is each one will serve a family of schools.
Okay.
And now childcares as well. So plus some seniors day programs, which I'm really excited about, because now we've worked out a model where if they pass on poor things, it doesn't matter so much because they're not ordering directly from me. But I love seniors, right?
And brings you back to your roots.
I'm back to my roots, right? And now we're getting some offices that are asking about delivery, like the things that used to happen 25 years ago, right? Some people are asking about now. And we just had our 25th anniversary conference. It was on the weekend. It was Lunchy's 25th anniversary party. I'm
going to say that. Happy anniversary. I saw that in the notes here, and that's an incredible accomplishment for a small business. How did you celebrate?
Well, we had this great conference, and our team at head office, my team put on this fabulous party. They got me a tiara and everything.
That's amazing.
All my kids were there, and my husband, and our son Brendan, who is now 28, always makes a speech at the lunch lady. And he made a little speech this year because he now works for us part-time. We were at work today, actually. He shreds our paper. He's our chief paper shredder. He's our only paper shredder. But the kitchens are welcome to send in paper things that need shredding for him. He has no interest in the content, just the color of the paper, right? So it works out really well.
Yeah.
And so he made everybody weepy. Everyone loves to see him. The business is we had our awards. We always have dancing. I love to party. I'm sort of a party girl. And so there's a lot of dancing, lots of music, lots of celebrating, a lot of sharing, lots of learning. We had a great guest speaker from the States, and it was like amazing. They designed a logo for it. Everything was so good. And of course, today the lunch lady is all online, right? So it's an online order system. I learned my lesson with the paper menus, or collecting after the fact, way back when. And in about 2008, I was at a conference, and I heard this woman from the University of New Brunswick. Her name was Dr. Mary McKenna. And she said to me, schools educate by the choices they offer. And I thought about that. I looked at our menu. I thought, what are we really saying with our menus about what healthy food is or what it should be at school? And we were doing a bit better, but we could do a lot better than that. And so she really inspired me to change basically all our menus. And that led to us being invited to participate when the Ontario government introduced PPM 150 to be on one of their committees. And then there was a federal project on school food that ran for 3 years, from 2013 to 2016, that I was involved with. I was the only for-profit member. So I was the only volunteer. Everybody else was there because of their position in not-for-profit, or as educators or public health professionals. Heart and Stroke was on was a member of this initiative, as well as that doctor, Dr. Mary McKenna from University of New Brunswick. So the long and short of that is it further changed how I wanted our kitchen to be. And of course, with that, when you have a franchise, it's my job. I'm kind of the captain. You got to, see which way the wind is blowing and move the ship forward. But people do not like change. People who really want to embrace change, they're going to start their own business. They're not necessarily going to be in a franchise. The franchise gives you the opportunity to be in business for yourself, but not by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So managing change is really the biggest part of what a franchise business is, managing the people and helping them to change. Mm-hmm. And if people don't want to change or they're not ready to make that change, that's okay. I got over taking it personally if anyone left a long time ago. I just really think you've brought it, your business so far, it's worked for you in your life up to now. It's time for you to do something different. That's okay, because now somebody else will have that opportunity and build on the legacy you left. And that's all good. I mean, to me, that's another thing that's so great about our business, because you can kind of hop on and hop off it where it suits your lifestyle to have that kind of involvement. So.
Well, I'm curious too, because I mean, you've probably had, how many lunches have you served?
Well, we're in 160 communities serving. We do 2.4 million meals a year, I think.
That's incredible.
Congratulations.
But I'm curious too, because I know my kids learn better when they eat good food, right? That's facts. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about a little earlier. And so how much research are you doing into the food that you're having the lunch ladies across Canada make, and how often are you changing it up, and what does that look like for you? And do you get to do that kind of high level exciting work?
I do, actually. With the changes in philosophy, and again, even though I have two partners right now, and they're both my work husbands, right? I guess you could call them. But they've always let me make the business an expression of my vision of it, which is really terrific. And so the food—
there can only be one lunch lady, right?
There can only be one lunch lady.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that's true, right? So we decided that we were going to hire and create a position for a nutrition manager. Okay. And George Brown has a wonderful course that graduates certified nutrition managers. And we now have 3 on staff. And so because we're also involved with childcare as well, and because we love guidelines, really, I mean, you got to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. And you're right. The point you make about food fueling your afternoon is true, but there's that relationship at an elementary school between food and fundraising that's kind of hard to crack sometimes, right? And so schools still need a lot of encouragement to put to make that connection between food and learning. Mm-hmm. It's very easy when you're in charge of raising funds for your school to say, well, it's just a lunch or it's just a treat. But life is a cumulative affair. And how much are you having the treat? And how much how many occasions do you have where there's no carrots or apples, right? There's nothing wrong with the treat. There's nothing wrong with going out and eating French fries or ice cream or anything you want. Mm-hmm. But there's a place for party food, as I call it, right? And there's a place for real food or daily food. Mm-hmm. Every day cannot be a party in your mouth, right? Every day, like you can't just go crazy and go, oh, it's cake day. It can't be cake every day, right? Or shouldn't be, maybe. And so the whole idea of what we eat is a really big part of my life now, because also with our son, we modified his diet and all our diets, and it made a huge difference in his behavior. And so for us at home, we have very little dairy. My husband has a bit in his coffee, but we cook gluten-free, dairy-free, mm-hmm. and we're probably pretty good in the kitchen now. I mean, I love to cook now. Really, truly, I love to cook. And but you are what you eat, darn it. I think that is true, and I think that we just don't want to face that. There's no time in history when we've had more information about what is good for us to eat yet at the same time, so few people actually cooking in the kitchen, and children with an increasing risk for diabetes at a young age, and increasing amounts of obesity. In the midst of all this knowledge and information, the problem is just accelerating.
We have so much access to food, but we're eating the wrong food. So,
well, you know, it is. It's a bit of a nightmare out there in the supermarket, right? There are more aisles devoted to snacks than there are to vegetables, likely now, right?
You're absolutely right.
So it is a difficult landscape, and it is hard to take back control of the cupboard on your own, really, without support, and especially if you have friends that will sympathize with your situation. And I understand how that goes. But really, if you buy cookies to put in the lunch and they eat them all on the weekend, I guess they ate the cookies. So I guess there's no cookies in the lunch. But it's very hard for a parent not to run to the store and buy more because they feel that they're being a bad parent, or they're being guilted, or they're being judged.
In the lunch, right? The treat in the lunch.
That's right. So it's not easy, but it is so worth it to take a stand. And I don't know, when we're faced with cooking shows like the Food Network, which is a lovely, I must admit, as I see some beautiful things on there, but that's so intimidating to someone who doesn't even have basic cooking skills, right? I mean, you're almost, you know, you're going to like fail before you start. So we have all these extremes, right? This food that's kind of unattainable, and you wouldn't want to see the nutritional count in it just because it may have been
a lot of butter, right? Isn't that the secret to
lot? Maybe you can't eat that every day, or you can only eat a little bit, right? And then the other extreme where parents are really busy and they don't need to have pizza for their kids at lunch because they're probably getting that at dinner.
Yeah.
Because they're busy and they're not really sure what they can do that's fast, quick, and easy that will work, right? So it's a real, we're so thankful that we're able to provide hot meals in the middle of the day if that's what they want for their child, right? We have cold stuff, but we have a lot of hot stuff because we know that after school there may be activities or lessons or whatever, and parents are going to do what is the easiest then. So in the school environment, the focus shouldn't be necessarily on what is easiest. It should be on what's good for the students or what's best for the students, right? And given the fact that kids won't get any nutrition from what they don't eat, but if there's more of a level playing field and the school sets stronger rules about what is good for school food, it really helps everybody. So my next thing is, now that the lunch lady is well established, is I'm not like getting younger, right? Obviously. And
yeah, I was going to ask, what's the next 25 years look like?
Well, in 25 years, I'll be what? I'll be 90 something or other, 93 or something, right? So probably I'll still be in the lunch late. But this year, we set up a foundation. And the reason for it was, I think all kids should have access to the kind of meals we serve that other parents pay for, the same quality of food, not can be not found food, or what is usually cold food because of where the food's being prepared, and they don't have the access to the facility. So I'd like to see more of that happening. But also we have a lot of operational expertise within all of our kitchens. And so I really feel it'd be so wonderful if we and our franchise partners had the opportunity to engage and kind of mentor a not-for-profit in their own area. And so as part of our conference on the weekend, I talked a lot about personal balance sheet, because yes, we make a living, and yes, we want to be comfortable, but really in all, money will not fill up whatever's missing in a person. It'll just mean that you can make more and more extreme efforts to try and fill it. It's really by serving the community and feeling that you're making a difference and personally impacting someone else and seeing it, that makes you feel so good as a person. So I talked a lot about that's what I want for all of them. And so my partners from the foundation, which include the famous Dr. Mary McKenna, who's one of our directors.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, which is so amazing. And another woman named Sharon Brodowski, who I met during that initiative.
Yeah.
And our former VP at the Lunch Lady, who's semi-retired now. So we made a presentation to them, and they were so excited. It was so amazing. They were so excited about it. They had their hand up, and a lot of them are already doing great things in their community.
Yeah, good.
But nobody knows, right? So it's pooling all of those ideas and all of that generosity of heart to make something even more fantastic. So yeah, so that's kind of my next deal, is the foundation. Yeah.
Tell people how they can find you. Let's do some social channels and your website. Let's do some shout outs here.
Okay, so our website is www.thelunchlady.ca.
Ruthie, keep going. Yes.
We'll keep going. Let me see, our
Twitter.
I'm at Lunch Lady Group. Okay. Our Facebook page is Lunch Lady Group. Our Instagram is probably at Lunch Lady Group. Can you tell I get a bit of help with that piece? Right? Yeah, and I don't know, you can just Google me, I suppose. I don't even know what comes up if you Google me. I'm sure something must. But, oh yeah, and this year too, of course, because our son Brendan works for the Lunch Lady, and because we accepted men into the organization, and we have our Lunch Ladies from all over the world. We were so pleased too, we were the first ever recipient of the Canadian Franchise Association's Inclusion and Diversity Award. So I had that to share at the conference as well. So it's like a banner year.
Yeah, truly. I mean, Ruthie Burd, I would say, we've learned a little bit about your dirty little secret, and that was that you couldn't cook at the very beginning. But now you're a lunch story. What a story, an inspiring story. And now you've turned into this thought leader in your industry. So fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time to share your story with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Ruthie Burd. And thanks to everyone who tuned in to listen. Your comments are welcomed and encouraged. Please subscribe to our Women's March Canada channel and receive updates every time we upload a new podcast, which is usually on a Friday. Our mission across Canada is to stand together in solidarity with our partners and children for the protection of our rights, our safety, our health, and our families, recognizing that our vibrant and diverse communities are the strength of our country. This is Women's March Canada podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Women's March CDA and on our website, womensmarchcanada.com. I'm Melissa Durrell, and I'm wishing everyone a fantastic day. Thanks so much. And